GitHub Copilot Agent with Burke Holland.
The Azure and DevOps podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using the latest in .NET, Azure, AI, and DevOps. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. The show is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a full-service software architecture and engineering firm. Find them at www.clearmeasure.com. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. My guest today on the show is Burke Holland, and he is a principal developer advocate at Microsoft, and he leads the Developer Tools Advocacy team. He's done so much in Developer Tools, like growing VS Code from 6 million to 40 plus million users and beyond. He's a frequent speaker at all kinds of conferences like Microsoft Build and Ignite, GitHub Universe, QCon, and many more. And he also co-founded VS Code Day. And he's led a lot of product launches for GitHub Copilot, Codespaces, and so many more. And he has a very popular YouTube channel talking about developer tech. We'll include that in the show notes. But Burke, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I really like that intro. I'm gonna get you to intro me from now on everywhere I go. It's probably the best intro I've ever gotten. Good. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, you've done a lot. I mean, so it's kind of easy. When I'm putting together introductions, I really have to pare it down because I love interviewing people like you. I could go on for probably several minutes of all the stuff that you've done. But I want to talk to you about all the work that you're doing with GitHub Copilot and Agent Mode. But I always like to ask the guests, if we go back in time, what was it that kind of sparked your attention or sparked your imagination where you just really loved doing this type of work? And have there been any moments in your career you think have been instrumental in leading you to what you are working on today?
Oh, man. I mean, if I was to go back in time, I'm in my mid-20s and I'm doing... What am I doing? I'm doing like ASP.NET Dev. It's like .NET 1.1, maybe 2.0. Yeah. And during that time, I'm 27, 28, and I'm trying to figure out what it is that I'm good at. And so I'm reading books by Sean Wildermuth.
Yeah.
Yeah, like going through the .NET framework, trying to learn every part of it, and then going on technical interviews at Microsoft and not even making it past the first round, right? And so at some point it's just clear to me that I don't have what it takes to be a dev at a place. I don't want to say a dev at a place like Microsoft, but that wasn't my strong suit, right? I was a good dev, but I didn't think I would ever be a great dev. And at some point I went somewhere. I can't remember where I went. And there was someone there and their whole job was an evangelist. They were like a Visual Studio evangelist or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this is a job I could totally do because I can code and I can talk to people. And generally, on the engineering teams, I'm the one that gets sent in to talk to the PMs or talk to leadership to represent the town. I could totally do this. So I think that was the moment at which I realized. And so I just started doing it. I applied to conferences, just local conferences, and people would just be like, yeah, come on out, talk about whatever. WPF, you have no experience? Yeah, come right on in, man. So that's how I got into this field. And then at a conference, I actually went to a conference and I met Todd Anglin, who was working at Telerik at the time. And he was the first one to hire me for an actual evangelism, because we called them evangelists back then. Yes, 2011. And I've been in this field since then. Once I got into it, I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. This is me. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've, so many technical professionals end up going into management and you're one that's kind of stayed technical. Instead of managing people, you're staying in the tech.
So yes, that's both. I'd say that's both true and not true. It's true, but also as you go throughout your career, you kind of get forced into that because companies don't really organizations aren't really structured to have high level, what we might call high, you're not going to find a corporate vice president level person who doesn't have anybody reporting to them.
Right.
That's just really strange. Like Microsoft has, what are they, like technical fellows and distinguished engineers? And I think technical fellows maybe don't have people. I don't even know. Right. It does exist. It's just rare. And so the most common path is so I was director of DevRel at Progress, at Telerik and Progress. And then even now, I have a team of 4 folks here at Microsoft. But I would say I'm probably not a great manager. Like, I think maybe people even on my team would be like, yeah, he's all right. I don't know. But I don't feel like I'm doing anything if I'm not in the tech and writing about it or talking about it. That's what really makes me feel like I matter and that I'm providing value. Otherwise, I don't feel like I'm providing any value at all, just going to meetings.
Right.
Now I feel like I'm in therapy. This is good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's free of charge.
I think about construction a lot. Not that building a house is like building software, but I always think of what material, anyone who's creating anything has to think about the materials that we're working with and what tools are available and what materials are available. And if I'm building houses, there's new materials that come out every now and then, but it's not every month, it's not every quarter, it's a much slower pace. And likewise, the available tools to put on a roof or frame a house. Whereas in the software world, there's new tools so frequently, and there's new libraries, which are, I think of as the materials, so frequently. And just to keep up with what's available is totally different.
And that's always been the case, right? Even from when I first was in the industry, that things change so fast. And I quickly moved from .NET to JavaScript. So I've been in the JavaScript space a long time. And JavaScript is particularly bad about this, right? I don't know if you remember the days of whether it's like jQuery and then there's Backbone and then there's Knockout. And it's just moving and moving and moving and the churn. And I used to love that. That was one of the things I loved about it so much, is like, who's going to build the next dope thing and then just give it away? Mm-hmm. That was what it was like to be a web dev. It's still that way.
Right.
I think though now there's 2 things have happened. One is I've gotten a lot older. And so I tend to get irritated a lot more easily with change. I don't know if that's an age thing, but also I think all of us can admit at this point that we are at an inflection point in history where it is completely ridiculous. The amount of change that's occurring, especially for devs, especially for us, right? AI isn't affecting anybody as much as it's affecting us. We're on the front lines.
Yeah.
We get to figure it all out for everyone. And that is just an extremely difficult place to be.
Well, you've done quite a few videos on GitHub Copilot and all the different modes and whatnot. And so I wanted to lead with GitHub Copilot agent or agent mode, whatever the right term to use is, and specifically not about using LLMs to make the next cool feature, but actually using this AI tech for. And I think the right term is AI-driven development. Like what is the engineering practice? So anyway, I'm going to use that term because I like it. But maybe there will be something else that comes out. But GitHub Copilot Agent, some of the listeners have played around with it, but there's a lot of people who haven't even given it a shot yet. So what can they do with it right now?
Yeah, so let's clarify. Let's go back and clarify a few things. And we'll start with like the branding. And this is our fault. I'll do my best to clarify here. So when I'm talking to you, I'm talking about Visual Studio Code because that's the team I work on. And so that's where all of my focus is. And so when we talk about VS Code, we're not Copilot is part of VS Code. And because of the open source announcement where we said we're going to open source the extension, what we really mean is we're going to bring all that functionality into the core. So it will be no extension. And so in VS Code, it's just VS Code. There's agent mode in VS Code. There's completions in VS Code. There's inline chat in VS Code. AI is just a part of the experience of VS Code. Mm-hmm. GitHub Copilot is the thing that powers that. But Copilot itself shows up in a lot of places. It's in Visual Studio. It's in JetBrains products. It's in Xcode. It's everywhere. And of course, it's on GitHub.com and a lot of places. Like a lot of people don't know that there's like, I call it the frog. If you look at the top of GitHub, there's the frog icon. If you click that, you go into something called hyperspace. You can chat with repos and open issues and stuff. It's very, very powerful. So when we think about agent, like what is Copilot agent for? it depends on where you're using it. So if you're in Visual Studio Code, we call the agent. The agent is a mode inside of Visual Studio Code. Within the chat, there's a drop down and it says agent. And that's just the chat. And it says agent. And then your chat is in agent mode. And again, all this stuff is changing really quickly. I think at some point in the future, there probably won't be different modes. Like right now we have ask mode, edit mode, and agent mode.
Yeah.
And in ask mode, you can talk to the chat and it talks back. It's kind of like just going to ChatGPT. It can't touch your code. It can see your code, but it doesn't actually touch it. It doesn't write anything. And then there's edit mode, wherein it does very specific tasks where you might say like update this file to do X, and it just updates that one file. And then
unless I'm missing something, it's the same experience in Visual Studio as VS Code. At least it looks like that on my box.
They're similar, but they're not identical. And this is where it gets confusing is that, people are like, well, it's Copilot is the same everywhere. And it just is not at all, right? It depends on what editor you're using. You'll get different experiences and different feature sets.
Okay.
And so it's been so long since I've looked at Visual Studio that I could not tell you what that experience actually looks like.
Well, in the latest preview, the edit option went away. It was ask, edit, and agent, and now it's just ask and agent.
Really? They already pulled the edit?
So
I'll have to tell the VS Code team that's happened. Maybe it's time for us to pull our edit mode too.
Because I've been using agent a lot. I mean, I was upgrading some old in Hibernate mappings, a whole in Hibernate mapping data layer with .NET Framework. I'm like, okay, we want all this in Entity Framework core. And it took probably several days of work into a couple of hours just because so many minute details of what is the equivalent in Entity Framework data layer mapping from many years ago in Hibernate.
Yeah, it's extremely tedious stuff.
Right.
All right, so let me finish my thought on the agent. Otherwise, my brain won't be able to move on. We'll be stuck here for the next 45 minutes. So you have the agent mode in VS Code. And in the agent mode, you're asking the AI to do something. And the AI will do what we call turns, and as many turns as it needs to do to complete the operation. So you might say I'm going to speak in front end terms. I don't know if your listeners are very front end or back end, but bear with me, y'all, if this all sounds foreign to you. But let's say you wanted to move from the Bootstrap CSS framework to the Tailwind CSS framework, and you would tell the agent, replace Bootstrap in this project with Tailwind. And the agent then says, okay, the first thing I need to do is look at the files and see where it's at. What are the dependencies? Okay, what is the latest version of Tailwind? Okay, I need to install that. So I'm going to run that in the term, right? So it's just going to act kind of like a human being, and it's going to do turns until it gets to the solution. And so in the background, the agent is going back to itself. The LLM is literally talking to itself, and it's iterating. It's like, I found this, and it sends that back. And then it comes back and has an answer, and then it iterates on that answer based on what it found. And then so that's inside the editor. And now you have what we call the Copilot coding agent, which lives in GitHub, where you can actually delegate either an issue or a task directly from Visual Studio Code. So you could say, update the in Hibernate mappings or whatever the prompt is. And instead of running it in Visual Studio Code, you would say, delegate to the coding agent. And then what happens is it's actually running in GitHub, assuming that's where your project is. And it's running async outside your editor. And of course, you can have a bunch of these things running at once. And then it opens a PR, and then you review the PR, and you can reply back and say, yeah, it's close, right? But we're still missing this or that. And it will iterate there. So you sort of have you think about it as like local agents and remote agents, and managing those. There's a lot of agents.
Yeah. Well, what everybody seems to be excited about is the prospect of just moving faster. And of course, if we're just generating bugs and things are breaking, then we're not moving faster. So you got to keep the quality up. But that seems to be the theme. People, and if certainly management wants their development team to move faster. And this seems to be something that might help that happen.
Yeah. And I think we're in this moment right now where we're trying to figure out exactly what that is. We have this unique distinction right now of being in a space where nobody knows actually what the product is supposed to look like. Which, if you think about it, is nuts. Like, I don't know that I've ever been a part of something where people are like, well, AI is going to help developers. And it's like, well, how? And it's like, I don't know, somebody figure it out, right? And then you have to go figure out what that is. And so right now, I think we're in a space where you sort of have two camps of people. You have people that are really into completions. And these are developers who are they're still writing code. And they're primarily using AI-powered completions. what we call ghost text or next edit suggestion. And this is where they're getting the most bang for their buck, and it makes them more productive. They don't have to write a regex. It writes boilerplate code for them. It helps them to just move faster. And then you have like the agentic stuff where the agent is actually writing the code. And you called it agent driven or AI driven development. We call it prompt driven development. And I think that area is a little bit more murky, and people are really trying to figure out like, how do I get the most out of this particular way of working, which is a new way of working. One of the things people need to realize about AI is that we've kind of been asking the wrong questions about it. Like the questions we've been asking are, how do I improve my current workflow with AI? Which is the wrong question to ask. The right question to ask is, what is the new way to solve this problem with AI? There is a new way of working. What is that new way of working? And this agent mode is the new way of working. The problem is no one's quite sure what those defined workflows are. And so it is easily possible to get into a mode with the agent where you just are iterating and it's not doing it right. And you start over and you blow it all away. You start again. Right. And 3 hours later, you're no closer to where you were than when you started. And you say to yourself, this can't be the future. Right. There's no way. I just lost I could have done this 5 times by now myself. Right. And then there are times when you give the agent the proper context and you iterate appropriately, and it is able to do weeks worth of work in the span of one day. And so we're trying to figure out and help people figure out what those workflows are. And that's part of my job is to help do that. Okay. So that's how I would describe the current moment that we're in.
Yeah. And I've certainly done that too. We're experimenting and then realizing this is too big. This is too big of a task. And then going back to the smaller ones, because when IntelliSense first started, it was you would get one word generated. You hit the dot and then you hit tab and it generated a word. And then you had a few words and then extract variable and then maybe a for loop or a function. So you get a few lines generated and then you go to a whole function. But now it seems like in experimenting, I'm tempted to go from that to this big jump, generate a huge bit. And I think it's too much of a jump. I think we just have to keep moving to, generate a class and then generate, multiple changes. And when we try to jump too far, then we get stuck and realize, this isn't working.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And this is one of the things that I'm realizing myself and I'm trying to help people with is that when you work, so the example I gave where I'm like, rip out Bootstrap and put in Tailwind is a terrible prompt. Don't do that. What you should do instead is say, install Tailwind in this project.
Yeah.
Identify all the places where Bootstrap is used in this project and output that to a markdown file, right? You want to move iteratively. All right. Now break that markdown file into 10 major steps here that we need to move through to effectively refactor this. Now let's do step 1. Confirm that step 1 is done correctly. Now let's do step 2. Because if you don't do that, what happens is the AI is more than happy to just run through your code and change thousands of lines. It doesn't care. It will try to do what you ask it to do. And the problem is that as a human being, who wants to have to review that? How are you going to do that? Are you going to go through and are you really going to go through and look at thousands of lines of changed code? If somebody did that on a team, you would be like, no, that's not how we do PRs. Right? That's not how we write code. And so the problem is that when you do that as a dev, it makes you really lazy. And what you start doing is you just delegate all of the thinking to the AI, which is a huge mistake because you will get into a place where you just don't understand how anything is implemented. How does auth work here? How is the database handled? Are we creating like multiple connections to the database instead of using a pooled connection? You don't know. Right. You have no idea. You don't even know where it's happening in the app. And furthermore, you don't care because you're in this cycle where you're just prompting and you're just trying to get to an end state and you're moving faster than you've disengaged your brain.
Yeah.
And so I think to your point, like this is how you want to work as you said, is iteratively, a little bit at a time. Don't get a big chunk, get the next part that you can conceptually hold on to, and then to the next part, etc.
What you mentioned about not understanding how it works, it took me back It took me back to when I was 18 years old, had my first programming job, literally a week after high school graduation, and doing early web applications and active server pages. And I was so excited when I got something working. And I really didn't understand like why it was working, but somehow I stumbled upon, copied and paste from Deja News or a Usenet group, and now it's working. Okay, don't touch it because it's working. I didn't know how or why at the time. And it's the same risk. If a bunch of code's being generated and either it's too much and I don't review it, or it can get to the same problem. And then when the bug happens, it's a showstopper event because I have no clue how it worked in the first place.
Yeah, that's so true. Do you think that, let me ask you this, do you think that it's more satisfying to get something working or more satisfying to get something that you feel like is structured well?
Yeah.
And that you understand?
Yeah, the second.
Definitely, right? And so right now with AI, we're all on the first and we're trying to figure out how to get to that second spot. But let me just throw a hypothetical your way. Just walk this out to its logical conclusion here, because I think this is a fun thought exercise.
Okay.
If the AI is going to write the code and you don't need to write the code, then what do we need code for? In other words,
that's a good question.
Programming languages are for us.
Yep. Who's talking about putting something besides C# in GitHub right now?
What do you mean?
As long as we're putting C# in GitHub, the code is the definition of the software. So when is something else going to be the definition of the software?
Yes, exactly. And what is that? I don't know what the answer is here, but I had this thought the other day. I was driving, I was talking to my wife, and I had this just thought that like, do they even need programming languages? Like, isn't that for us as human beings to help us talk to the machines? Like, they don't need that. So anyway, it kind of a tangent there, but those are like the weird thoughts I have about AI.
Well, now it's like philosophy and what might be in the future. Well, and I look at how we've come to create SQL Server databases. Such a huge journey. And now with automated DevOps environments, creating SQL Server databases is easy, and the right pattern emerged. It's a directory of migrations where if you execute them in order, everyone is an incremental change to that SQL Server schema. And if you execute them in order, you come out with the right database that you need. And so I'm wondering if there was a series of prompts that if you just went off somewhere else in a different environment and executed them in order, and you somehow built the same software system. I mean,
and now
that just comes to mind.
Yeah. And so now we get into two things. So first of all, we are developing tools to try to do this in Visual Studio Code, where you have a chat history, and we have different ways of working where we recommend that you work in these incremental steps, like I said, and then accept your changes, commit them, and start a new chat. And that way everything is tied to a commit, and then you have a history, and then you have checkpoints where you can always roll back. So you can go back at some point, like if it breaks, you can roll back and be like, go back to this checkpoint here. However, the problem with AI is that it's stochastic. So we don't actually know what it's going to do the next time it does something, which is just like for developers, like this just is the silliest thing in the world. Why in the world would you inject a system into your workflow where you don't know what it's going to do next?
Yeah.
If you think about it, we've never had that. So there is no scenario, I don't think, in which you could create migrations that would get the AI to do exactly the same thing, because the AI is going to make different decisions the next time.
Right.
It may decide to do things entirely differently.
Right. You'd have to have, I had an interview with Scott Hunter, and he was opining about if this is going to force us to come back to rigorous specifications. Like, a lot of people did more rigorous specifications in the past. Not go overboard, but just that's a total lost art, he thought, right now.
Okay. Can I bellyache about this for a minute?
Yeah,
so first of all, I think he's right? So like the current answer really is write a detailed specification, and you really can get the AI to do really high quality work and repeatable work. That is true. Now, here's my thought on that. Who wants to do that?
It's not fun.
Nobody wants to do that, right? Like that is like someone had posted the other day and they said, I really like AI completions, but all this spec and prompt writing you can keep. That is not why I got into this business. And I have waves of that come over me where I'm like, is writing detailed specs the future? I don't want any part of that. Okay.
Yeah.
But then the second part of it is we don't know what the thing looks like at the beginning. No one knows. Like I just built something over the weekend I was testing and trying to, get fodder for new content. And as I'm going along, it's like, you don't know. You kind of only know what the next step is, unless you're working in a very, very highly standardized, processitized environment where people are writing specs and figuring out what the software looks like. That isn't how software is made. It's iterative. You're figuring it out as you go. And it really doesn't look like, in the end, it's not what you had in your mind at the beginning. So you can't write a spec for the thing because you don't know what it is.
Right. But don't we have some patterns that are more standardized? And you and I mean, people who have hit the 20-year mark and look back, it's like, oh yeah, there was a time when I spent weeks just trying to talk to SQL Server or just trying to serialize something to go across an older version of a queue system. And now it's just a library and it's a single 1-2 lines of code. And it's no drama. So there's so many things that have been standardized into libraries that used to be a big deal. And so we don't have to, we kind of discount that progress. But for those types of things, the question is, do we need prompt-driven development for that? Or are we not writing that code anyway because it's just a library now?
I mean, these are the areas where it's like, I just don't know. All you can really do is hypothesize. But I think your point's well made that we figure these things out. Right? Like, this is what we do. We solve hard problems, and we are in the moment of very hard problems. And I think that these things are being solved right now. I apologize.
That's all right.
These things are being solved right now by things like, well, I say these things. These problems are being solved by technologies like MCP, where we figure out how to give the agents more context so that it can know about the database, or it can know about the Figma design, or it can know about the repo. Because what we're learning is that the context is everything. I remember when models first came out, what we thought the answer is we're all going to have a fine-tuned model on our code base. Do you remember this? Like this was the sort of that. And what we learned is that that's probably not actually the case. These models are more accurate when they have really, really good context. And so then the energy goes into making sure that they have the context they need, because otherwise they will just make up the answer. And that's where all the problems come from. But if you give them the context, then they will just use that, because they don't know how to say, well, you didn't specify, what version of SQL Server you're using. So I need you to tell me so I can they'll just give you an API from 4 years ago if that's the only frame of reference they have. So I do think these problems are being
round
solved.
Tripped to the model every time, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of turns.
Yeah. Because unless it's doing something special, these the server process on top of the model, that's just compute, right? It's just you have to send everything to it every turn.
Well, this is the thing. This is what the engineers on the VS Code team have to deal with, right? This is what they're working with. So let me give you an example. I think Gemini 2.5 Flash, forgive me if I'm off on this, has a 1 million token context window. That is massive.
Yeah.
And so what you think is, well, I'll just cram everything into the context window and just send it. But the problem is that when you do that, you're going to be waiting quite a long time for the model to answer. And anybody who's used AI has noticed this, where if it takes the model a long time to answer you, like I don't know if you've used agent mode, but like Claude is extremely accurate and good, and it can also be quite slow. And so when you start waiting like that, it's really frustrating and irritating. You're like, what am I supposed to do? Just like sit here and watch this thing cook? And so these engineers are trying to figure out, how do we keep the context window small enough so that it's fast, but with the right information in it without you constantly having to manage the context window?
Right.
All of this is happening behind the scenes, and we don't really think about it, but somebody has to think about it. It's just not us. Yeah. It's these poor folks over on the VS Code engineering team they're so good and they're so smart and they work so hard at this, and no one knows the chaos of working with AI on the back end is something else.
Right. So agent mode literally just came out at build. If really from the announcement, the big splash.
Copilot coding agent.
Right. The coding agent.
Yeah.
But
the one that runs in GitHub.
And this is so new that what we've heard talk of possibly being able to use Ollama or models that are locally hosted. Is that is that going to actually pan out, do you think?
Yeah, 100%. You can do that today. So if in Visual Studio Code, you can download Ollama, and then you can download a model. Like you could get Quinn 3, I think is a good completions model, although we don't support custom models for completions, only in chat. But if you go to the model picker, you can do configure models, and then it'll give you Open Router, Ollama, whatever. And then once you're running that model locally, you just slap I think it's just the path in there, and it will use that local model. Now, the problem here at the moment is that none of these local models are really good enough to compare to things like Claude or 4.1 or Gemini 2.5 Pro. And I don't know that we're going to get there. And actually, Apple's sort of like now I don't know if we can talk about this in the show.
Sure.
I have been waiting for Apple to deliver some really, really compelling AI technology on the iPhone, because it knows everything about you. So it should be able to just do remarkable things. And it just doesn't. And the question is like, why is that? And I read an article recently about how they are looking at using ChatGPT, which means this entire time they've been trying to run a model on the device instead of using one of these large language models. And I think that they're learning what all of us have learned, which is that that is extremely difficult to do in the current moment. But just not to the point where these local models have performance that's anywhere near what you're going to need to actually do the job. These large language models can hardly do the job at times. We get very frustrated and angry with them. Locals is even worse, but you can do it today.
Okay. So locally, I'm wondering if the small tasks, if they'd be able to do those, like generate just the proper contents of this function.
I think they definitely can do the smaller tasks. Yes. Yeah, they could, right?
Because
I think they could show up in our workflows.
If I have a decent NVIDIA graphics card locally, I can make use of that hardware. But I think everybody's trying to figure out how much does it really cost when we start having to pay for how much we're going to use in the cloud. But the cloud is so much faster because the data center hardware is so much better.
Yeah, because you need so much compute. Like, I don't think people realize how much compute is required every time you call these large language models. Like, it's just nuts. And we don't, so you could have, in theory, we could have, like, I think NVIDIA's got this like Grace Blackwell supercomputer they're going to start selling. I forget, it's like $4,000. And it's essentially like a supercomputer for your office. And like, so the question is, can you run a quality large language model locally? If we can get to that point, then I think that we're in a new world. And I think we probably will get there.
Well, okay. That sounds really interesting. But I think for all the work at home people, I think it's also going to come with like a mini split air conditioner upgrade for the office, all the heat that's generated.
Well, what about all the power it's going to pull from the grid?
Well, that too.
Can we even absorb that? I don't know that we
the
can.
Canadians have it made in the winter. Just put the computer on the ledge, on the window ledge outside.
Down here in the South, we can't we can't have anything generating any more heat in the house.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, we'll include links to the to your YouTube channel and all of your content in the show notes. But you mentioned a couple things that even in as much as I try to keep up with things, you mentioned some things that I hadn't known yet or hadn't using. I have Ollama locally, but for some reason I don't know how to get the option to. There's so many things. Where can we point the listeners to so that they can truly get an understanding of what they can do right now? Yeah,
which fire hose to drink from? I mean, I think the best thing to do is for Visual Studio Code is to follow the official Twitter account. Okay. If you're on that platform, the Blue Sky account, LinkedIn account, we post in all of these places. Additionally, there's an r/VS Code and r/GitHub Copilot Reddit threads that I would highly recommend that people subscribe to. I think in the current moment, keep using that phrase, but even for me, like I work on the team every Monday, we're in a stand-up talking about what's coming, and I struggle. Stuff drops in the release, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Checkpoints are here. What? You can delegate to the coding agent. When did that happen? Yesterday? Okay, I guess I'll tell everyone. You just kind of have to be really attentive and sort of like an unhealthy amount of online at the moment. There's not really a great way, because you don't want to just know what we're saying, right? What about like Kimmy Moonshot comes out? You're going to want to know about that. How are you going to know about that? People are probably listening. They're like, I don't know what that is. I'm gonna have to go Google that, right? Like you want to know what these things are. And the only way to do that is to just adopt an unhealthy lifestyle. I'm sorry. That's the only answer I have for you.
Yeah. Well, the space is moving so good. And I mean, Copilot has some stiff competition, which is good for everybody.
Great for developers. Yes.
Yeah. With Cursor and DevExpress CodeRush AI and the JetBrains AI assistant and more and more, it's so, who's going to have the next best demo or actual usage scenario, and then just wait a few months, and then everybody keeps on jockeying back and forth and learning from each other.
Totally. And I think, I'm biased here, but I think we will have the best experience. But there are some great tools out there, right? There's some fascinating stuff, and people should just download and try this stuff out. There's so many. It's really a great time to be a developer in a lot of ways, in the sense that you have so much power. And I think that one of the things that I feel like is I feel like I should just quit my job and start a company, because I can build anything now. I can build anything. Yeah. Whereas in the past, it's I don't have the time nor the patience to put that together, or I don't think I could figure out how to create a real-time drawing application. You can absolutely do that now. And you don't even need a team of people. You can do it yourself with a team of agents. And that should be inspiring to everyone. You can create anything.
As long as you are the software architect, right?
As long as you are the software architect, yes. Again, if you don't know what you're doing, you will quickly get into a spot where, it'd be kind of like building a house. You don't know what you're doing. You'll get something. You won't want to live in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the key. I talked to so many customers who are asking, in the future, I have 4 open software engineer positions right now. Should I fill those, or is AI going to be generating all the code by next year anyway? And it's these non-technical executives who ask it because they're hearing all the hype. As people who have been a programmer and maybe now they're executive, they kind of have enough perspective to know that you still have to know what good looks like. Even if a machine automates everything, you have to have the expertise to know, oh yes, I like what it produced. I
totally agree. And I think so. The question about should we hire these 4 people, or should we have AI do it? Again, we just keep asking the wrong questions. This just is not the right question to ask. The right question to ask is, how do we do more with AI now that it's here? So in other words, everybody's got this backlog, right? I don't know a single dev shop on the planet that is there's just not a lot to do, right? There's a backlog of stuff that no one even wants to think about.
Yep.
You can now tackle all of that. What if we didn't have to have these horrible applications that have been around for 20 years and put together with bubblegum and baling wire, and no one knows how they work because they've been built by 26 people, none of whom are here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But AI can now tackle this and bring it forward. And so I think, do you need those 4 people? I think you desperately need those 4 people, because you cannot leverage AI without them.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, that's the holy grail. All these legacy applications, is there somehow a path to modernize those in an automated way? I know we don't know the answer to that, but I
think we're working on it. You have the Java modernization tool, the .NET modernization tool. I don't know. We'll see.
All these old applications are just this perfectly balanced of library dependencies that all work together. And if you start to upgrade one thing.
Yeah, in no world is there an ROI in getting anywhere near that thing, right? It's just don't even look at it.
Yeah,
just let it be.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the Azure and DevOps podcast and talking with us about AI and GitHub Copilot and VS Code. This is a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I know it took us 2 months to figure out the timing here, but we got it.
But we're good. We're good. This is awesome. And until next time, dear listener, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure and DevOps podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Visit our sponsor, ClearMeasure, at www.clearmeasure.com. And on behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.